It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another video for Season 9 of The Walking Dead. This is going to be my episode review for the mid-season finale of Season 9. Season 9 Episode 8 called Evolution. Overall, I absolutely enjoyed this episode. I think that this is one of the best, if not the best, episodes that we've seen in a long time, arguably. But overall, I really enjoyed the episode. I mean, it was exciting, it was epic, it was insane, and, it just had a good mixture of everything, I think. Going from building up the tension of the new threats, the whispers, to building up some of the newer characters in terms of character development and everything, and also some action sequences, some crazy sequences that made it look like a movie in a way. But other than that, I think the other thing this episode did very well was make the show look like a horror show again. It's been a long time since we really thought about, Walking Dead scaring us. But this episode really did that. And I think that just the atmosphere, the fog, the graveyard, the creepiness of the new villains, all of that was combined to make this episode not only creepy, but also make it a memorable episode all around. But I do want to go into some of the kind of plot points that I have jotted down here and briefly share my opinions. So, of course, the intro with Daryl, Aaron, and Jesus looking at the herd who were milling around and acting not in a normal way, acting like, they are just being led by someone almost, which they were, of course. But I really loved that. I think that the whole vibe of that intro was perfectly executed and done in a great way. And not just the intro, but all the other scenes that was leading up to that final moment. But, specifically during the daytime where we had them noticing things about the walkers, trying to lead them away, but noticing that they're coming back. So I absolutely enjoyed all of that. Especially at the intro, we were basically with the herd. So we were getting a POV shot of being within the herd and being amongst the dead. Much like how a whisper would feel if you think about it. So that was all great. I got a lot of No Way Out vibes in some of these scenes, and I'm sure they did that intentionally, and I'm sure that we're going to see a lot more of that when we jump into the Whisper story arc, because of course the Whisper's arc is a mixture of all out war, no way out, and just surviving. You know what I mean? So I love that they integrated that feel from the comics into the show. And I absolutely love that we had that intimate, right there in your face moment with some of the Walker scenes, or the Whisper scenes, as well as the Walker scenes. I absolutely love that. Another point that I have written down here, which kind of has two components. One happens later on in the episode, but I'll just bundle them together here. But we have the scene with Negan and Father Gabriel. I absolutely enjoyed the scene with them. I mean, there's definitely some chemistry between those two characters, and I mean, their interactions are not only genuine but also entertaining. So I absolutely loved how Father Gabriel was trying to get on Negan's nerves, and Negan was at times trying to get on Father Gabriel's nerves, and it was just a back and forth thing, which I absolutely enjoyed. But that scene with the shit bucket, I mean, that was just epic. Of course, it happened in the comics, so we knew it was coming. It wasn't shocking or anything, but just seeing that moment from the comics come to life in the show was epic. And I didn't think they could do it justice because Negan can't swear in the show, but it worked the way they did it, and I absolutely enjoyed it. And going back to what I said about Negan trying to get on Father Gabriel's nerves, we do get Negan getting so much under his skin that Father Gabriel is careless. He just doesn't give a damn, and he just basically slams the cell door and leaves. And of course it's not locked, and Negan gets out. One thing I do want to say before I talk about Negan getting out, I'm a bit confused about that scene. I mean, most likely it was unintentional, but at the same time, wasn't there a guard there that untied Negan? And wouldn't it be logical for that guard to check the door? So in a way, it gets me to kind of think maybe Father Gabriel did this intentionally and he's trying to keep his eyes open for Negan to see if he's truly changed. That's very unlikely because he had a lot on his mind, and I don't think he would be thinking about pulling this test on Negan like this in that circumstance. So it's very unlikely. But the other thing that I noticed is I think that guard was one of the saviors before. So could it be possible that, he did it on purpose? Remains to be seen. But that's very interesting. I'm keeping my eyes open for the remainder of Negan's escape storyline in the next episode, because I wonder if it wasn't as plain or simple as Father Gabriel just forgetting to lock the door. You know what I mean? But I absolutely loved the scene between Father Gabriel and Negan. And of course, Negan gets out. That was an epic scene where he just looks at the ball, throws it away, and walks outside. That was all great to see. Then we get the scene where Michonne and Siddiq bring Magna's group to Hilltop. Now, that was a great scene in my opinion, not only because it highlighted or emphasized the fact that there was definitely something going on during the time skip, and something must have happened that pushed these two communities so far apart. And in a way, the Hilltoppers were treating Michonne and other Alexandrians as the enemy. Think about it. When Negan showed up to Alexandria back in season 7, I'm sure if there was anyone outside or if there was any guards that saw them coming, they would act the same way as Hilltoppers did in this episode when they saw Michonne. So that just highlights again that they're treating Michonne and the other Alexandrians as the enemy, which is very, very interesting. I do have 2 videos coming up back to back later this week about what could have possibly happened between these two communities during the time jump, and also what is the deal with the scars, the X's on Michonne and Daryl. These two are pretty connected in my opinion, but I do want to separate them just to kind of focus on them individually. But stay tuned for those 2 standalone videos. But I definitely loved that scene when Michonne and the others come to Hilltop. The other thing is that we gotta throw in Carol in the mix as well, because it seems like she was not happy to see Alexandrians there either. I mean, maybe whatever happened between Alexandria and Hilltop, Carol didn't want to have anything to do with it, didn't want to take any part in it, and just stayed out of it. And maybe she feels a little uncomfortable being in the middle of them again. You know what I mean? Of course, they're not fighting now, assuming they were fighting before, but there's really nothing there now. They're just not friendly to each other. But at the same time, I think it was uncomfortable for Carol to be in that situation. But that is also another interesting thing that we might get more answers on in the next half. And again, I will kind of touch on that in the standalone videos that I have. We have Carol talking to Michonne. I really loved that conversation. I think it's the first time those two are talking to each other for quite a long time, maybe even forever. But another thing this really emphasizes again is how selfish Michonne has become and how much isolated she is, which is definitely interesting. But then going from there, we have Carol saying her goodbyes to Henry, who's going to stay at Hilltop and become a blacksmith. I really like the scene between Carol and Henry, but it does have me a bit concerned for Carol, because in a way that could have been a hint or them foreshadowing something happening to Carol, possibly. But they had a similar scene between Ezekiel and Henry as well, so I think that at this point they want you to not be able to tell whether they're gonna do something to Carol or Ezekiel, which is very smart in my opinion. But I really loved that conversation between Carol and Henry and the whole interaction between them. Then going from there, we have Henry meeting new people at Hilltop, teenagers in fact, and he begins building some sort of relationship with them and building a bond with them, and they kind of hit it off and they go outside the gates and party. I don't like these people, these kids. I mean, at this point in the apocalypse, you really can't be making any stupid decisions or stupid mistakes like they were making. I understand that their introduction or those characters were serving a purpose. Their sole purpose was to do something to get Henry in trouble. and for Henry to end up in the jail cell. At the end of the day, that's the whole kind of purpose those characters and that storyline served. But I really like what they did there, but in a way they could have made those characters a bit more relatable. And I'm not hating on them because they were definitely characters in the comics at this time that are adaptations, I think, of what these characters are supposed to represent. And they basically had the same level of assholeness. So I understand that they're bringing in that from the comics, but they could have made at least one of them more relatable. Then from there, we have Rosita waking up and panicking and everything about the others going after Eugene, trying to find him. Of course, at the end of the episode, we realize why Rosita was so concerned and was so freaked out. But that was a great scene, I think, because it emphasized again that there's a threat out there that no one knows about, that they're in a way underestimating, which I absolutely loved. Then Eugene is found in the barn and the walkers get there, so they have to basically drag him out. I loved that whole scene. I mean, from the reveal of what Eugene says to the atmosphere to the cinematography, I really enjoyed that. I loved the whole thing. One thing I forgot to talk about when we were talking about Henry, when he's put in a jail cell for his drunk behavior, like I said, we knew that it was going to happen from the comics because, of course, Henry is taking on Carl's comic arc. And, comic readers knew this was coming. But at the same time, I really did like the way they brought everything back around with Earl. And how they had everything kind of go in a circle. Because, of course, Earl was in that same spot, attempted to kill Maggie in the first episode of season 9. So I loved that they kind of circled that around and mentioned that in the conversation that Earl and Henry had. Their scenes could have been trimmed a little bit. I think it was a little bit too long, but I did like what they did there. Then jumping back into what I was saying about Eugene. So of course they find Eugene, they leave, and then they notice that the walkers are still there. They are on their ass and they have to do something. So basically they break apart. They separate, which I actually predicted. We have Daryl and Dog by themselves, and Eugene, Aaron, and Jesus kind of going a separate way, trying to find their way out. So that was all great. I loved that. And of course, it was a smart decision because, of course, Daryl is just one person with the dog and they can get away from hard, sticky situations a lot easier than Aaron, Jesus, and Eugene, given that Eugene is injured. And, of course, there needs to be two people helping Eugene who is injured because he can't walk fast. So I really loved that they did that because it's realistic in a way and it makes sense for the story. So I really loved that. And I really loved that, Daryl was trying to get the walkers to approach him and they kind of were redirected by an unseen force. I really loved the way that played out. And of course we have the scene with Eugene, Aaron, and Jesus being trapped in the graveyard. Now, if I want to say how much I loved that scene or that sequence of scenes leading up to Jesus' death, I would have to keep talking for another 15 to 20 minutes. So all I'm going to say is I loved the atmosphere. I loved the way they had that play out. I loved the slow-mo action sequences. And, I loved all of that. It was all perfectly done. But one thing that I'm disappointed with is that they took Jesus away when he had this much potential. I mean, the Jesus from this episode, especially at the end, was the Jesus we've been wanting ever since he was introduced. And it's almost too late for them to give us this. This character was so underutilized that it's not even funny. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking, but I think his character was wasted in a way. But the other thing, I loved Michonne and Magnus Group getting there and helping. That was unexpected and a great twist. I really loved that. And of course, Magnus saying we're here to earn our keep was definitely great. And I definitely think that this helps in Michonne maybe trusting this group a bit more. And maybe the audience as well. So I absolutely loved that. And then we get the Whisperer killing Jesus. I've said a lot about Jesus' death, but as much as I hate losing Jesus, I love the way they took him out. I mean, this is a great way to introduce an iconic villain, to kill an iconic character in an iconic way. I absolutely loved what they did. And in a way, Even though I knew that Jesus was dying because it was spoiled for me, I was still surprised when it happened because I wasn't expecting it to happen quite like that. So I absolutely loved that. And then at the end, of course, with the Whisperer being unmasked, I really loved that. That was great. I mean, talk about making the episode creepy. That scene was creepy as hell. I mean, the way Daryl was holding the mask reminded me of that scene from the new Halloween movie at the beginning of the movie when they're showing Michael Myers the mask. So I absolutely loved that whole sequence. And of course, the cliffhanger is there are Whisperers and they're trapped still. Not really trapped, but you know, they have to fight off the walkers / Whisperers. But of course, we're gonna pick up exactly from here in the next episode in 3 months. It's gonna be back in February. So I'm very excited for the episode, and in a way, as much as I don't like cliffhangers, this cliffhanger worked, I think. But that's basically it for my review. This was an extremely long video review, but you know, it is what it is. There was a lot to cover. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video. If you like what you see, press like, subscribe for more content, and press the bell button to receive notifications for daily uploads. Like and follow the Facebook page of this channel to join our community. And check out the upload schedule to learn more about daily uploads.